But one of the most important things we do in a contest is we need to have good quality judges and judges that are appropriately briefed. And today we have Nick Kastelein, who is known to, I think, a lot of people, particularly as he was a competitor at the district level this year. So he's got lots of experience in knowing how to actually compete. And in order to compete and succeed to that level, you need to know what the judges are looking for. So to talk about judging, please welcome Nick Kastelein.
All right, thank you, Nick. Nick's absolutely right. If you want to be an effective competitor at a contest, you need to understand the judging criteria. But also, if you're going to be judging at a contest, that's a really important role. All of the competitors have put in a lot of preparation. They have some expectation really about what they're going to be judged against. And so as competitors, as judges rather, we need to really respect the effort that all the competitors have been putting in to try and give the most fair and balanced assessment of their performance against the judging criteria. And it's not easy. It's not easy. So in the past, when I've done sort of the chief judging role, I've done it a few times, and at the start of the competition, you do a briefing. I tell people, on the one hand, take the role very seriously. Try and do your best to be fair and to give a good assessment of everyone. On the other hand, realise it doesn't all fall down on you. We have a panel of judges for a reason. No matter how we handle it, judging is going to be subjective. It's going to come down to your opinion of how the person measured up against the judging criteria. And so you've just got to give your assessment of which speaker you believe should have won. And so on the one hand, take it seriously. On the other side, don't worry, because it's not all down to you. You're one on a panel of people. So what I want to do today, firstly, I'll just let everyone know, I've actually had a cold most of the week. I got tested. It wasn't coronavirus. It was rhinovirus. And so I'm really hoping that my voice doesn't give out during the course of this. If people have contributions and want to ask questions or make statements during this, please put it up in the chat. I'll try and keep an eye on the chat. And that way we can have some level of interaction during this. What I want to do is I've got the judging ballots. I've pulled them up. They're available online, very easy. If you just Google table topics, contest ballot Toastmasters, you'll find it, or international contest ballot Toastmasters. They come up, and so they're freely available for everyone to have a look at. Matt, am I going to be able to share my screen?
I will make you a host, and now you can share.
All right, I'll share my screen. And what I just want to do is actually look at the ballots and look at how we can use those ballots and what all of the items on each ballot mean. So firstly, how we use them. Obviously, the first task we're given is we're given the list of speakers, and you want to write their names up the top. Provided you have less than 6 speakers, I actually like to write everyone's name in every second one rather than every one, in order to space it out and maximise the use of space. I also write notes on a second piece of paper against each of the categories so that I can approximately remember how I came to the judgment that I did. Some people like to use the ballot this way when they have it as paper. They like to fold it over after each speaker, and so they'll work from this side to that side and fold it over so they can't see their previous judgments. That might work for you. Maybe you've got a very good mind for that kind of method. For myself, I actually think it's important that judging is comparative. You're saying how the speaker compared to the previous speakers. And so I like to go back and look at what I gave the previous speakers and say, does that feel right? When I look at the structure of all the 5 speakers we've had, have I actually ranked them correctly in the numberings that I've given? So sometimes I will revisit the previous judgment and actually modify it as my understanding of the level of the speakers changes throughout a competition. Lastly, 2 more points with regards to how we use this I actually find these categories up here, excellent, very good, good, and fair, are very useful for me. I first think, which one of these did they fall in on this category? Was that excellent speech development, or was it just good speech development? And then I put it somewhere, whether it's in the middle of that or towards the lower end or the upper end of good or very good or excellent. I find those useful for a simple reason. This judging criteria is specifically intended to give different weighting to different things. And so some things are out of 10, other things are out of 15, other things are out of 20 on this one. And so that means that if you give someone a 5 under 10, to give them the same level under a 20, you've got to give them a 10. And so our scoring should scale. And that's not easy necessarily to do with your mind, but if you look at these brackets, then you can position that in the fair, good, very good, excellent categories. So I've just noticed the chat's coming up. When I'm sharing screen, they come up differently. Okay, so what I wanted to do was just have a bit of a look and a discussion about these different criteria. They're actually fairly common between the different competitions. But the most important one to understand is the international contest and the categories in that. And then you'll find that there's some small ways that you deviate from that for the other competitions. So it's divided up into these 3 different areas: content, delivery, and language. Most of the time, if you attend a competition in person, then they'll print this ballot out for you, and they'll print on the back of it this list of descriptions which help you to understand what each of those categories mean. Now, these are also quite useful if you haven't ever judged before. Certainly the first time I go to judge, I would recommend reading these so that you understand what each of these categories represent. So content, speech development really is all about structure and the way that a speech has been structured. So if we think, what's good speech development through to what's excellent speech development, that can be a difficult judgment to make. Now, probably fair, the lower end, is going to be when you get a bit confused during the speech about the order that they're saying things, or they have to double back, or you're not seeing the logical connections because the order that the speaker's saying things is getting a bit confusing. A good speech development won't have that. You'll understand everything that they say from one end to the other. What are things that might push it through to very good or excellent speech development? So very good, I would say when there's themes that are woven through the speech, when the closing of the speech ties into the introduction and rounds everything off, so there's no loose ends. And probably towards the excellent level is when you feel that the journey you were taken on was interesting and exciting and it captivated you the whole way through. Because a speech is a journey that takes you from one end to the other. That journey, there'll be a logical journey, there'll be an emotional journey. If you find that it was just a seamless journey, took you from one end to the other, it was interesting, there were themes, and every sort of note along the way felt right, then that's good speech development. And especially if you feel very strongly that the climax of the speech. So if the speech builds up to what its main purpose is and does so in a way that's climactic, that's really good speech development. So I wouldn't just look objectively at structure. Did they have opening, body, conclusion? But what was the journey? That makes it a bit more organic, and that's a subjective assessment. But I find that really useful way of looking at speech development. Effectiveness. Effectiveness, probably one of the hardest ones to judge. Under this one, I do look around at the rest of the audience and look at how are they reacting. If the aim of the speaker was to shock the audience and you look around and at that point everyone went, then that was effective. They got the reaction they were looking for. If they made a joke and everyone laughed, they got the reaction they were looking for. If they make a joke and it goes down like a lead balloon, that's less effective. Somehow or other, they delivered it ineffectively. So it really is about achieving audience response that it was aiming at. And so look at the way that the audience reacted to the speech. and see, was it effective in engendering the reaction that it was aiming for. Now, of course, you can look also at your own reaction as an audience member, but if you're able to, you do want to look broader than just yourself. You want to look at everyone else. You might find that you loved it, but a lot of other people are looking a bit offended or shocked or confused. That's difficult, of course, when it's on Zoom. It's digital and you can't see everyone's reactions necessarily. Speech value. This is an interesting one. All right, I'm just going to stop for a moment and look at the chat. How can you look at the audience if you have your eyes on the speaker? Okay, so that's a really good question. The speech, of course, is going to be 7 minutes long. And so if you were just any old audience member, hopefully you do spend that 7 minutes watching the speaker. But if you're a judge, at some point you're going to be looking away from the speaker, you're going to be looking down at your notes, and you're going to be looking at all the other audience members as well. So that is a challenge, and I'll come back to that because I think it's important as to how we spend that 7 minutes as a judge. Another person also, like me, takes notes on the criteria, well done, and compares strengths and progress. All right, I'll be very cautious about progress. Depending what you mean. If you're talking about how the speech progresses, then yes, that's speech development. If you're talking about how that speaker has progressed, you should not look at that. You've got to, in an ideal situation as a judge, you don't know any of the speakers, you've never seen them speak before. If you have to make sure your knowledge of that speaker doesn't bias you as to how they're speaking in terms of their own progression as a speaker. Would you recommend stopping your video during a speech online, or does that make it obvious as a judge? I don't particularly have an opinion on that one.
So I just meant, does it make you obvious? Does it make it obvious that you're a judge if you took yourself offline?
I don't think so. Well, certainly when I'm online, I turn my camera off all the time because I want to sneeze or cough or whatever. So I don't think it'd be too obvious.
Okay.
Trust me, the speakers aren't thinking about that. So, all right. So let's get back to the list then. So speech value is really what this speech has to offer. This is a hard one for a lot of people to distinguish from effectiveness and speech development. But if we think back to especially the old Competent Communicator Manual and some of the workshops about why we do speeches. Some speeches are to inform, some are to entertain, some are to persuade or to inspire. They're broadly the big purposes of speaking, and then there's specific purposes. So we learn that every speech has a general purpose and a specific. Now, what you'll notice, certainly with international, is most speakers, they inspire and they entertain and they inform and they persuade. They actually are packing a lot in what they try to provide you in terms of the value of the speech. And so it is about delivering something that has a lot of return for the audience, that they walk away having received some value in terms of being entertained, in terms of being inspired, in terms of learning new things. And so that's what speech value really is about. So that's the first block, content, and that's 50%. So that's a big portion, which really does explain what we tend to see in the international contest. The next 30% is about our delivery, the physics of the speech, if you like. There's physical, voice, and manner. So physical aspects of the speech, I like to think of it in terms of working from my eyes and outwards. That just helps me to think of what the physical aspects of a speech are. Eye contact, facial expressions, gestures, stance or posture, and movement. And so all 5 of those contribute to the effectiveness of a speech. And at some stage, when I'm a judge, at some stage I'll stop and I'll just tick box through all 5 of those and say, how are they using them? What's their eye contact like? You know, oh, very natural. They're looking at everyone and engaging with everyone. What's their facial expressions like? And sometimes, because we tend to be polarized. As viewers, we naturally polarize. We say, I like it or I don't like it. You don't want to do that as a judge. You want to say, these things were effective, these things weren't. And so you might find you really like someone because of the way they move around the stage, and that appeals to you. But then when you actually look, you realize they're not using facial expressions. And for someone who delivers dry humor, for instance, their use of facial expression is to have none. But for other people like myself, I use my face all the time. I use my eyebrows and everything. So look through their body language. How do you divide it between fair, good, very good, and excellent then? Well, obviously fair is going to be, in the fair category, is there something actually a bit problematic or inhibiting about the body language? Is it making the speech less effective for some reason? There's some irritating, repetitive movement that they're doing, something that's getting in the way, or they're just not using it at all. It's just absent from the speech. Good will just be if they're basically using it in an effective way. Pushing up into very good and excellent, you really need to be looking for some kind of wow factor, something they're doing that's out of the box that demonstrates skill. And so did they do something particularly dramatic, or did they, or particularly innovative in the way that they've used their body and the physical aspects of their speech? All right, I'll look again at the chat and see what people said. There's a comment about judges remaining anonymous virtually that everyone can read. Yes, 29 international winner provided a great example of the whole package. And in fact, most of the international speakers do provide a good example of bringing together the whole package of things that you can do within physical. I like appealing to Dan and Jay Hediarachi, although I haven't necessarily seen all the recent winners, but his is very textbook in terms of demonstrating a lot of things. So, pardon me. In terms of voice then, again, with voice, I do 5 things. I can remember the 5 Ps, so pitch, power, pause, pace, and personality. You might have other ways of remembering different aspects of voice. But for myself, again, I go through a tick box of these because some people, they're really good at using volume. And then you realize when you actually go through the list, you go, actually, they're speaking at a very constant pace. They're not really varying their pace at all. And it's a lost opportunity. And so you might go, all right, well, they're not into the very good, they're just in the good or something like that. And so, again, if you want to get into very good or excellent, you're looking at exemplary use of voice that demonstrates skill. So people do dialogue between 2 characters, or they might have a bit of singing, or they're doing some accents, or very fast-paced, very slow-paced, extremely dramatic. I've seen a lot of different innovative uses of voice and sound to go that next level and give a bit of wow factor to a presentation. All right, just looking at the chat, I'm going to come back to these. The 5 Ps of voice. Sorry, I did say those very quickly. So pitch, pace, pause, power, and personality are the 5 Ps that I go through. Pitch, pace, pause, power, and personality. All right, the next one is manner, and I find this the hardest personally, just in terms of how I think about these things. But manner, as described on the second page, it's the indirect revelation of the speaker's real self as the speech is delivered. And this is something that you can't do in terms of a tick box or a check box. Is this a real person speaking to me? The way that they're communicating, is that engendering in myself a kind of affinity to that person? I'm trying to think what the name, not sympathy, but empathy, you know. Are they engendering empathy? Are they using common human experience to connect with me as a person? Pardon me. And so that's what we're looking for in manner. That is quite subjective, but some people have a very engaging, very friendly way of speaking. And probably the person with the most natural, positive manner, I know he's in the room because I let him in a short time ago, is Daryl Clark. Really great in that area. You just, he very easily engenders calmness in the people that he's talking to and makes them feel happy about themselves. I'm probably naturally fairly bad at manner. I have to work hard on that. Sorry, I'm just having a coughing fit here. I'm going to read a few more of these chats that have come up. Someone wrote down the 5 Ps. Thanks for that, Matt. Connection with the audience. And someone also wrote about coherence. That's really important. So when you're looking at these things, it's not just did they have these things? Did they use their physical? Did they use the voice? Did they use their manner? But was it coherent with their message? And that's important. That's why speech development is at the top of the list. Everything hangs off achieving the journey and the message of the speech. Well, the final one is language. And language probably is a bit more tick boxy than some of the others. Appropriateness of language is just in terms of the language that they select and they use. Is it right for their message? Is it right for their audience? If you hear a lot of jargon, words you didn't understand or you wouldn't expect most people to understand, maybe Latin phrases that they think everyone will know because they think everyone has a classical education, I don't know. But appropriateness of language. Are they using language that everyone will very easily understand? And are they using it very effectively? I also think that sometimes people use a very small range of vocabulary and it kind of stifles the flow of the words because they repeat words often, whereas if instead of repeating words, they use subtly different words, they visited a thesaurus, and yeah, it's not too pretentious. That's very hard thing to judge, I guess, or it's subjective, but is the language appropriate and is it also artful, I guess? And then finally, correctness. It's, for some people, it's unfortunate that that is there because people who have English as a second language, they may have very good reason that they would, of course, have errors in the way that they're using the language, but it is there. It's about using the language correctly, and so not using a word other than the word you actually meant. But sometimes also, when we're nervous, we just make unfortunate errors in our sentences. We repeat things, we get the wrong grammar, the wrong tense, and that can come out. And so, but the best speech, something that's getting in the 10 category, is going to be really using language correctly so that you don't get distracted by the errors you hear and instead you're just hearing the message. All right, I'll look back at the chat again. Do we make allowances for ESL contestants? That's, pardon me. That's very, I'm not sure. I don't know if there's a formal ruling on that. It's probably worth having a look. It's never been a deciding factor in a speech contest that I've been in, or that I've judged in. I've usually found even people who are ESL, they still get their point across effectively, and usually there's other things that are the deciding factor. But I have marked people down just because it's been a barrier to communication when they have had a lot of error in the language. So, yeah, so I think it says here some judges ignore language because they don't want to penalise non-native speakers, and that could be a reasonable thing to decide to do. I think there's nothing in the rules that says you have to use this ballot form exactly. So it's described as a guide, and you can choose to use it differently. But remember, all the competitors knew what this judging criteria was, and that's what they've prepared against. So they do generally expect that that's what you'll be implementing. All right, so that's gone through all of those categories. I'm going to try and change tabs here. All right, so you'll notice table topics is very similar. It's just a shorter list. I think the reason they've made it a shorter list is very simple. Table topics go by so quickly that you don't have much time to make a judgment. And so really you do benefit by reducing that list to 6. They've taken off speech value, they've taken off manner, and they left all of the other categories on. I'm going to try changing tab again. All right, humorous, again, very similar. Humorous, however, has an additional one, audience response. Now, that might be a clue that everyone's always saying that there's nothing on the humorous judging ballot that says it has to be humorous, but possibly they added this for a reason. Audience response is about the audience's reaction to the speech. Did the speech hold the audience's interest? Did the people understand and laugh at the humor? So you can actually, as a judge, you can concentrate all the stuff to do with did people laugh and put it in that one category, the audience response category, and then assess the rest of the speech according to the other categories. So that's a quite reasonable way to do that. In my opinion, although humour is the contest that I've traditionally done most well at, I actually think humour is on every line of this ballot. Speech development, effectiveness, speech value, physical, voice, manner, appropriateness and correctness, all of those also, they inform the humour. And so you want to see a good structure and good organisation to support the purpose of being a humorous speech. Good physical body language that supports the purpose of being a humorous speech. So that's a little bit subjective. I'll have another quick look at the chat and then I've got a few final things to say. Someone said it's a bit hard on Zoom to judge the audience or to look at audience reaction, very much so, and real difficulty for humorous contest online. Has anyone seen a judging form that's perhaps designed for online formats? I certainly haven't. Someone said humour is subjective. One audience may laugh while another may not. That's true. Humour is subjective. However, laughter does tend to be a communal response when you have an audience. So whilst that is true, I think that still most people find they're able to judge it. But that's also why we have a panel of judges, because across that panel, they will have different opinions about which they liked or didn't like as a person. But hopefully their average should be a reasonable average representation of who should have emerged as a winner on the day. We'll finally look at evaluation because it's the most unique. You'll see it's a completely different set. So evaluation, the judging criteria as provided to us on the judging form is very much about the content of the evaluation. The analysis that they presented, the recommendations that they provided, their technique as an evaluator, and finally the summary that they present at the end of the evaluation. Really important for competitors. They have to provide a summary. If you don't provide one, you get 0. So this is a logical flow from analysis to recommendations. Firstly, you deliver an analysis of the speech and its effectiveness, it's what things worked, what things didn't. Emerging from that, you need to provide recommendations to the speaker of how they, as a speaker, in their next speech, should modify or grow and develop their skills. Not all evaluators are good at providing recommendations that are actually recommendations. A recommendation is not an analysis that says this was ineffective. That's not a recommendation. A recommendation, you have to say this was ineffective, and so I think that next time you do a speech you should, and then you provide your recommendation. And as a judge you should distinguish between the two, the analysis and their recommendations. Recommendations is what they're saying the speaker should do next time or in other speeches. I think in terms of getting into the excellent category for both of these, it's about the breadth of the analysis and the practicality of the recommendations. So breadth of analysis, was all their analysis about the content, or did they also speak about the physical? Did they also speak about the voice? Did they also speak about the structure? How broadly, how effectively did they analyse the speech as a whole? So it's breadth and its depth. Recommendations then, it's about the practicality. Could you go away and implement those recommendations in your next speech? Could you do it? Do you know what to do? And so those are the two main standards that I would be holding those against. Again, if you want to read more about it, the second page of the judging ballot has some discussion about what these criteria mean. I'll have a quick look at the chat. How many recommendations should we give? In my opinion, you need at least 2. That's just based on the length of the speech. I think for most of the evaluations I've seen, an effective 3-minute evaluation, they give 2 good deep recommendations. Maybe they tack on a third one as some easy achievable thing, but there does need to be a time investment in the presentation about recommendations. All right, well, I'll stop sharing the screen. So I've gone through those criteria. Now, again, I said judging can be a challenge. One thing that people surprisingly get wrong very often is adding up. So the last thing you need to do on the judging ballot is you've given points out of 20, out of 15, out of 10 on all of those. At the bottom, you need to add it up, and it'll add up to a score out of 100. Now, we've done this workshop in person before and had everyone do some test ballots, and afterwards we checked their maths. Checked everyone's maths with a calculator or with a really smart person. Because I think I checked some of the maths and I might not have used a calculator, but I'm an engineer and I just trust myself, even though actually I get it wrong pretty often. So what we found, and this is the more important thing I'm saying, is that a lot of people made errors in their adding. It's very easy to make errors in adding up, but it's not good for the competitors. And so unless you are very confident in your mathematical genius, you do count down, you watch countdown and you get it all right and come up with all the answers. Probably best that you take a calculator or you double check yourself or something like that. And so have some way at the end of checking that you've actually got the right result. What I also do is exactly what Matt has just put there, a common sense check. So you've done your adding up and then you look who came first, second, third. Was it what you were expecting? And if it's not what you're expecting, look back at your numbers and say, according to which categories did this person win? What made them win? And you might find, actually, it is the right result. It was unexpected, but they, on a couple of categories, they really did an exemplary job and managed to pull ahead. Or you might find, I've got my maths wrong. Or I actually disagree with a bit of my own judgment, in which case you go back and change it and change the result. All right, thank you from the timer. That's 30 minutes. Now I don't know how far I'm over. A minute, I guess. I will say one last thing, and that is, because I promised I would talk about how do you spend that 7 minutes. And for myself, what I find very important is that I don't start writing straight away and that I'm not writing during the introduction. I like to watch and just sit as an audience member for a couple of minutes, and then I start writing. I find it's important. I actually I start writing down their structure. So I was like, point 1, they said this, an introduction with an analogy about this, segued into point 1 was this, point 2 was this. I dot point their structure and start following that. And then a bit after halfway through the speech, you probably find yourself in one of the longer sections of explanation or something. I tune out for a moment, I look at the audience, and then I start going through an objective checkbox in my head for body language and vocal variety. So I'm not really listening to what they're saying at this point. I'm just looking at what are they using? Are they using their facial expressions, their eye contact? Are they using the stage? Are they using their voice? They're using volume and pitch and all of that. And I step out of it for a moment, and then I step back in and I'm back in listening and engaging with the speech for the conclusion. And that helps me to then come up with some kind of assessment against all the categories. Difficult in table topics because you only have 2 minutes. But that's the basic formula I do. So thanks for the chat participation, everyone. Hopefully that's worked all right. Sorry about the coughing, and good luck next time you do judging.
Thank you very much, Nick. An excellent session, as always, from Nick Kastelein. You can always trust him to come along with insightful ideas and thoughts about the topic. So I thought it was a fantastic session, and I'm sure everyone got a lot out of it. So thanks again, Nick, for a tremendous set.